Welcome to Reclaim Your Health, the show where we have discussions about thriving in life, even with a chronic illness. Over half of the United States population has at least one chronic illness, whether that be a physical or a mental condition. I personally relate to chronic illness because I have had several myself and even grew up with my mom having one as well. The thing is, that is not a unique experience. Many of us have or have had several chronic conditions or are close to someone that has one too. So, with that, it is my goal to normalize talking about health and wellness while considering that most of us have an illness or affected by someone that has one. So, this is an exciting episode because I have been inviting you all to come on the show and bring awareness about your chronic illness. And this is the first episode of the series. We're going to call it the Living With series. And we'll be featuring a bunch of different chronic illnesses. I'm excited because my aunt Chanel has volunteered to be the first guest and share her experience with the condition. And so you'll get to hear her perspective, hear what it is. And even if you may not relate to this specific illness, you learn something new. And you might, even if you have a different one, you might see how you do relate, even though it's a completely different condition. So it's definitely going to be worth listening to. I'm excited that she has come on. I'm honored to be able to speak with you today. You guys are going to love her personality. So thank you, Chanel, for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's such an important topic. So I was very interested in being involved.
Yes, I'm grateful. So, okay, so let's just get right into it. What is your chronic condition?
So I have got osteoarthritis, and I have it in both knees and in both of my hips. And I was told at age 35, that I needed my knee replaced.
Wow.
Right? And I didn't
Yeah,
get it done until about 45. And even then, there were several surgeons I went to who would not do my surgery because I was so young. And then,
interesting.
right? And then the problem with the hip is because I limped so long on my knee that I actually messed up my other knee and my hip. And so finally, I was having lots of hip pain, lots of knee pain, and found a surgeon, an excellent surgeon who did my knee replacement. I guess it was 7 years ago on my
Mm.
right knee. And then 2 years ago, I had my left knee replaced. The good thing is, since having my knees replaced, my hips feel a whole lot better. So I'm going to hold off on that. So
Yeah.
on the x-ray, it looks bad, but I feel good. So one of my things I would say is that you can't always go by your lab results, your x-ray, your CT scan. So you have to also go by how you feel. So
Yes.
if you are functional and your x-rays look horrible, you have bone on bone arthritis, but you can still do all the things you want to do, then I would say continue doing what you want to do. For me, it just got to the point where I couldn't sleep. I couldn't walk up and down stairs. If I had to plan things, like if I was going to go even to the mall I would do it on a Friday because I knew Saturday and Sunday I would have to sleep all day and ice it and take ibuprofen to be able to get up and work on Monday.
Wow. Yeah, you brought up so many good points and said a lot with that. I want to back up to you finding out at 35 that
Right.
you like what? That's a really young age, right? And
It
especially for
is.
something like osteoarthritis, I wouldn't think 35-year-old needing a knee replacement. How was
Right.
that experience for you if you remember finding that out?
Well, right. So it's interesting because you're right. It's very, very young because it's typically like the wear and tear arthritis. So for
Mhm.
me, it was a combination of genetics and injury. So I did, when I was in high school, junior high, high school, I did gymnastics and cheerleading. And I was, very small. I was like 90 pounds at the time. So I was always on the top of the pyramid and I would flip
Mhm.
and land down. So I did a lot of, trauma to my joints just from landing from heights and being thrown in the air and coming down and doing gymnastics. And then in college, I did karate.
Mhm.
and yoga, and I would run around the track, which all of those things are just not great for your joints. Um, and I think what I injured my knee doing gymnastics, and I had a meniscal tear, and they
Okay.
did surgery on it. And back in those days, they would do surgery for meniscal tear. We don't
Mm.
do that now right away because it speeds up arthritis. So that's why I think part of it was, previous injury. Then I had a surgery that, in retrospect, we don't do now because it leads to arthritis. So it was a combination of things, just like I think most chronic illnesses are a combination of things. It's rare that it's just diet, it's just lifestyle, it's just genetics. It's usually a combination of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also want to highlight, I don't know if you all noticed you was saying that we don't do this anymore. It's because Chanel works in healthcare. I don't know how we skipped over that part.
Right. So I'm a physician assistant. I've been a PA for 23 years now. I did 15 years in the emergency room, and I've done 10 years with Duke Orthopedics. So it's interesting that I had my knees replaced, and now I work in orthopedics.
Right. I was like, when you were talking, I was like, "Oh, wait, I know that." But, people like, "Why is she saying we? She an
Right,
orthopedic?"
right.
Like, "Maybe." So, yeah, she has a lot of experience with this. I even had the opportunity years ago to
Mm,
see Chanel in action in orthopedics, and that was really cool for me to see. I hadn't had that experience, before, but it is a little, ironic that, like, the thing that you were dealing with is something that you ended up working in. Do you think that inspired you to work in that field? With
it
that specialty?
Yeah, it did, because I left the ER because I couldn't stand, it's a 12-hour shift and you end up working 14 hours. I did 16-hour shifts and I just couldn't stand that long. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to switch and do something else where I could still do procedures.
Mhm.
And orthopedics is one of the few specialties that is still very hands-on. And
Mhm.
then I found it very helpful that I could talk to my patients about physical therapy and about diet changes and about exercise and post-op care and all of those things because I had been through it. So I've often had patients say, "Oh, no one ever told me that." And I'm like, "Yep, I'm telling you because I went through it and this is going to be helpful." So,
Yeah.
mhm,
Wow, and I think, like, something else that's interesting about all of that is that, you know, we can see even in a professional way how a chronic condition has affected your quality of life, daily life. Like you were saying,
mhm,
you couldn't those were long periods of standing in a
mhm.
ER. So you ended up wanting something different. And that's what a lot of us end up feeling, that our chronic condition and illnesses or diseases, they affect us on a daily basis. And you were even saying how you were very active growing up through high school, through college. I'm sure this affected how much you were being able to be active as an adult. Can you speak to that? How it affected your activity?
Absolutely. So, it's interesting because you sort of scale back. For me, I scaled back my activity, and then ended up finding things that were less painful. So I actually started doing water aerobics,
Hmm.
and I did that at the YMCA with this wonderful group of people, and all the women in my class were all retired. So I was so I was 40 and they were all 75, 85, 90, and they've been doing it for years. And it actually pushed me because I thought, if this 91-year-old lady can do this, then I can do this. Um,
Yeah.
the other interesting thing was that people would say, like, when I was in the pool, I was great and I could do all kinds of things I couldn't do outside the pool. Like I could do jumping jacks and I could run in the pool and do weights in the pool. And I would get out and I was sort of limping on the pool deck. And people would say, "Well, if your knee hurts, like, why are you doing this?" And my response was,
Mhm.
"It's going to hurt anyway. Like, if I sit on the couch, it's going to hurt. So it's better for me and healthier for me to do this water aerobics class because I'm helping my cardiovascular fitness. It's making the muscles around the knee joint stronger. So you're
Mhm.
depending more on the muscle to do the work and less on the joint to do the work." And then I would stretch afterwards to keep everything long and flexible, which also helped with pain. And then the third thing too is with weight. And I have a lot of patients come in and say, "Oh, I know my back hurts or my knee hurts because I need to lose weight." And that's not always the case. And certainly, your weight can, cause more pain. Like for every pound that you gain, it puts 3 pounds of pressure on your knee joint. So I'll
Mm.
tell people, because I'll say, I need to lose 50 pounds. No, you can lose 5 pounds, and that will
Yeah.
make your joint feel better. And so you can't blame everything. And people say, oh, I just need to lose weight. No, even if you stretched and if you made your muscles stronger without any change in weight, that will help with that joint pain. Putting weight on that joint, which sounds counterintuitive because you don't want to put weight on it because it hurts, but it
Mhm.
actually makes the bone stronger. And for me, this last year, I've actually been doing more. Well, I will back up. I started riding my bike as well. So
Mhm.
after post-op, I started riding my bike because initially you can't get in the water because you have stitches. So I've been riding my bike a lot. It was to the point where I was riding my bike every day. And again, I started with 10 minutes a day. I was like, I can do anything for 10 minutes. I'm just gonna do
Right.
this 10 minutes a day. And then 10 minutes, the hardest part is getting on there. Because once you get on there, and sometimes I would ride the bike for 15 minutes and I would have to take a nap. I would get off the bike, ice my knee, and I was out for the day. And I got to the point where I could ride for longer and longer and longer periods of time. And then I started adding in the treadmill.
Mhm.
And I've seen the difference with that. I used to have my incline at 1 or 2 because if I walked
Mhm.
flat, it was hard on my joint. Or if
Mm.
I walked too high, it was hard on my joint. But like yesterday, I did a 60-minute hike ride. I was up to 10% incline, and I can do all of the things now that I want to do. I'm walking a lot outside, and my knee and my hip hurt less when I'm walking and when I'm riding my bike. And if I go a week, I was sick over Christmas. If I go a week without doing anything, then I find that, oh, now my knee's achy, or now my hip's achy. So even on the days I don't work out, I at least stretch and I try to walk for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then I think like when you were saying that you started with the water aerobics,
Mhm,
I talked about this before on this show, but one of the things that I think is kind of like a reframe that people can do. And I understand having a chronic condition that affects your daily life. It's a lot. It can be a lot to take in. It can
mhm,
be overwhelming. You have a lot of feelings that come with it. But one
mhm,
thing to maybe work towards is a reframe and think about this opportunity that it gives you to kind of rediscover or
mhm.
find something else that you can still enjoy. Or, like, you were in a water aerobics class with a bunch of retired women. And
Yeah.
who would have thought, like, you may not have ever had that experience or found that you enjoyed something like that had you not had that illness. So you can learn new things, try new things, and that there's science behind the benefits of learning new things. And so it
Right.
keeps your mind active. Even though
Mhm,
you have this illness, it's also an opportunity to like rediscover things about yourself and things about your surroundings and world and your new limits and
mhm,
that you haven't maybe tapped into before. So it's so cool to see that you were able to be open to that idea, because it's not always an easy thing to even be open to that, especially when you feel like I can't do the things that I used to do before. That can
mhm.
be really hard for people to take in.
Mhm. And I've done this, and I've told my patients this as well. When you have something like I liked Zumba because I used to like to
Mhm.
dance, and I liked Zumba. And what I did was I did aqua Zumba. So instead of saying
Ooh.
I can't do this Zumba class, I was like, how can I work out to music in a way that's
Ah,
fun? And they
yes.
have aqua Zumba, which was great and fun, and I could do that really well
Mhm.
without, having to give up a lot, and I still felt accomplished. I think the other big thing is to find something that you like to do. So for
Right.
me, like, and I can't swim because a lot of people would be like, "I can't get in the water. I can't swim." Girl, I can't swim. But you know what? I was in the water up to here, and I've never had my head underwater. It was perfectly fine. So you have to find things that you also enjoy because that way it doesn't feel like a chore. And
Right.
then I think the other thing is to be compassionate with yourself. I
Mhm.
think it's easier to be compassionate with other people. It's hard to be compassionate with yourself. So I also recently started taking a Tai Chi class, and it's 90 minutes and it's on Mondays. And I really like it. But this past Monday, I was just tired. I was just tired and had a lot to do. And I was going out of town. And I was like, you know what? I'm just not doing that today. And so you
Mhm.
have to also give yourself that grace and that compassion to know when you can push through and when you need to take a break. And so I just did Tai Chi at home, and I just did again. I have that 10-minute rule. I was like, I'm just going to do this for 10 minutes. and then I'm gonna stretch for 10 minutes, and then I'm done. So it's kind of good to see. And sometimes I'll work out for 10 minutes and I feel great and I will continue. And sometimes I'll do it for 10 minutes and I'm like, I'm tired, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah. So it seems like you're very in tune with your body, your thoughts, needing to scale back, needing to do more. I kind of want to touch on that a little bit because I know some people have probably heard, or they may have arthritis or osteoarthritis and different painful conditions. This is
Mhm,
kind of like my area too, not from a clinical standpoint, but currently I work as a chronic pain health coach. So I
mhm,
talk with people all day who are in pain with these different conditions and different diagnoses and everything.
mhm.
And one thing that is always shocking to people is that we tell them to move their body.
Right.
And, it's so counterintuitive. And not only that, that's not the messaging a lot of us have been told
Right.
growing up and through the years. So this is a perfect example of science and advice kind of developing. Before,
Mhm.
it's like, if you are hurt, rest. And not to say that rest is bad, of course, but it's not as much rest as you probably think it is.
Right.
We go
Right.
to have this extreme, we tend to have this extremist mindset. Like, obviously, like if you break your thigh bone, your femur, you're not going to be able to do certain things, right?
Right.
But you
Right.
don't wait until there is absolutely no pain in your leg before you
Correct.
start moving it at the same time. So
Correct.
that just kind of speaks to kind of making sure the judgments or your thoughts are up to date, because that
Are
whole
you still
rest
there?
until you're, yeah, it gets outdated. Like
Right.
it I don't know, that just kind of, when you brought that up, I was like, "Oh yeah, like
Mhm,
we need to not only be open to trying new things, but also open to learning what maybe our limiting knowledge is, because you may be making decisions based off of outdated information, and
mhm.
it could be limiting you and keeping you in a place that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to be."
Right, right. The other interesting thing is, again, I kind of go back to altering your activity because
Mhm.
right after my knee surgery, obviously, it was hard to walk, it was hard to stand, but what I did is I did chair yoga and I did,
Mhm.
arm weights. So I had this 10-minute, arms and light weights class that I could sit and do it. So
Mhm.
it did not put any stress on my knee, and I could do upper body stuff, and I still kept in that habit because for me, it also gets in that habit of if I'm not doing anything, I don't wanna do anything. Like, a body in motion wants to stay in motion, a body at rest wants to stay at rest. So if I
Yeah.
have in my brain that every day I'm gonna work out for at least 10 minutes, if I can't use my leg, I can still use my arms. I can still sit and do chair yoga. I can still do, a meditation. I can still use my upper body. So, just knowing when to alter, when to scale back. I think another issue I run into, especially with runners, is people think when they exercise, they have to go 110% all the time, every day. You have to sweat for it to count as an
Right.
exercise. Right, but it doesn't. It doesn't. You don't have to sweat for it to be a workout. You can do, and even for folks who are in 100% best health of their life, really should still have rest days where they're just stretching or doing yoga or walking or doing a recovery ride. So that's the other thing that's really important. It's important for everyone, but especially folks with chronic illness, to build recoveries into your activity. Because like you said, it's
Yeah.
important to be active. It's important to recover as well.
That reminds me of the term or phrase people say, like, "Have an active recovery." Like, that's
Mhm.
exactly what it means. I don't know why we have so many of us have this extremist mindset that, like you said, "If I didn't sweat, it didn't count," or whatever, and we always gotta go to the limit, or if it is it you didn't go hard enough if you're not sore. Not
Right,
necessarily. Not n that
right,
there is still benefit and value in literally moving your
right,
body, right?
right,
So, I like that, like focusing in on a active recovery, because we forget
right,
that sometimes too.
right. And I have never, there have been many times, even now, at least once a week, where I
Mhm.
just don't feel like working out. I'm like, "I'm tired. I wanna stay in
Yeah.
bed. I don't wanna do this today." And I'll do my workout anyway, and I have never, ever, ever had a workout that I didn't wanna do that I didn't feel better afterwards. Like,
Mm.
I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm in a bad mood, I had a crappy day at work, I don't wanna work out. I always feel better after I work out. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important too to keep in mind your why. Why am I doing this? What is my goal? And
Yes.
everybody has different goals, and I think if your goals are incremental, then it's helpful. So I think if you're starting a workout routine, or you're starting to be active, and you say, "I want to lose 900 pounds," like that's going to seem like an unattainable achievement.
Mhm.
But if you say, my goal is to lose 1 pound in the next 2 weeks, or for me it's even more about, my goal is to work out 10 minutes this week, and then my goal is to work out for 15 minutes next week.
Mhm.
Or I started working doing arm weights. I actually started with 2 pounds, and I went to 3 pounds, I went to 5 pounds, I went to 7 pounds, so now I have 15-pound weights. And so I'm like, my goal is to be able to do an overhead press with whatever that next step is, with 10 pounds. um, for me, my goal now is, I'm 53, and I'm like, my goal is to do balance work, which is why I'm doing the Tai Chi, because with osteoarthritis, one of the issues is, if you're uncomfortable, it can affect your balance, and you don't want to fall and then break your hip or break your shoulder, kind of thing.
Right.
Um, right, right. And so I'm like, my goal is to be able to maintain my balance and not fall. And that is what keeps me working out every day. My goal is to be able to go to the bathroom by myself when I am 90 years old. Right.
Mhm.
So that, like, that is something I can see in my mind, that is tangible, that I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. And some people want to, play with their grandkids, or be able to play pickleball in a tournament, or be able to roller skate. What you have to remember, especially on those days you don't want to work out, why am I doing this? And to realize that even if you are physically uncomfortable, if you're having joint pain, that your body will release those endorphins that are going to make your joints feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you're saying so many good things. I hope people are taking away a lot for this. I am. I'm like, yes, yes. um, but what I'm gathering, like, well, one, your mindset is really open, really positive. One thing I noticed you kept saying was, I can, I can, I can. So
Mm,
I want to highlight that, like, a lot of times our chronic conditions feel, or they do limit us physically,
mhm.
but it seems like there's a lot of internal mental work you need to do to be
Right,
able to do these physical things or try other physical things, because you do what you believe you can do, right?
right,
It
right,
speaks to your beliefs.
right.
Can you talk a little bit about your mindset? Why do you think you are so open and so positive? Or how did you get to this point if you weren't always like that? I'm sure people
It's
want to know.
right, right. So it's interesting, because growing up, one of the things that my mom always told me was, you can do anything you want to do. Like, so I always felt like I could I could do anything.
Mhm.
Was that always correct? Probably not. But I was like, yeah, I can jump off this roof. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I can do this. Which gave me that mindset of, I can at least try to do it. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if you don't even try it, then it's definitely not going to work. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of been my mindset with everything, with life in general. One of my sort of catchphrases is, all they can do is say no. Like, you can ask people, you can try to do stuff. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if you don't try at all, you will never know. And then
Yeah.
I've also had little reminders come up. Like, one day I was in the pool doing water aerobics, and it was maybe 3 or 4 months after my knee surgery, and my knee just hurt, and I didn't want to be in there, and I was just irritated. And there was somebody lap swimming in the pool next to me, and they got out of the pool, and they were missing the lower half of their leg. And I was like,
I
see,
mean,
right, here I am fussing about, oh, my leg hurts, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. Like,
yeah.
so I look at it also, and I think being in healthcare, I see a lot of people who have bigger physical limitations than I do. And I
Mhm.
think that, I'm sure most of the people who are listening to this, no matter what your limitations are, there are going to be other people who are more limited than you are. And so what
Mhm.
you do is you can look at, again, what you can do as opposed to saying what you can't do. Like, I can't use
Yeah.
my leg. I can still use my arm, so I'm going to do that. I can still get in the
Yeah.
pool, so I'm going to do that. And you learn as you do that, it sort of builds on itself because you realize, oh, I can do that, which means the next obstacle that comes up, you're like, oh, I can do that. And having my knee pain actually taught me, I've had other things come up that hurt, and I was like, "Oh, this is nothing." Like, I had knee surgery, and one time I fell. I was walking, and I fell and hit my knee and saw stars, and I was like, "Okay, that was really bad." So when something else comes up, I think about that, and I was like, "Oh, I got through that, and I did fine. So this
Yeah.
is no big deal. I can cross this mountain because I crossed that mountain." So I sort of look back at the things I have been able to overcome. Um, and then what's going on right now doesn't seem so insurmountable.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Like giving yourself it's like giving yourself perspective,
Mm,
kind of holding yourself accountable
mhm,
to what you want to do and where you are now, and being willing to try, being
mhm,
open to trying. Like you
mhm.
said, you don't have to have this like I'm gonna lose 900 pounds right away. Like you have to start with 1 pound. No
Right,
matter if you are eventually gonna hit the 900 pounds, you have to lose one either
right,
way. So you might
right,
as well focus on that, and that that can really help your mentality. It can help you see that you can do these things,
right.
because I feel like a lot of times with chronic illness or just new things that we're dealing with, if we haven't been through it before or seen ourselves do it, it's like extremely daunting and it's
Right,
overwhelming. So you kind of
right,
have to take steps to show yourself, give your brain the evidence that
right,
you can get through it.
right,
And so you can your brain doesn't need much evidence. It just needs a little bit of evidence. Like, I
right,
mean, so if you show yourself, I can lose 1 pound, or I can work out for 5-10 minutes today,
right,
and I don't have to burn 100 calories or however much in those 10
right,
minutes. I don't even have to
right,
sweat. I just have to
mm,
move my body. And
right,
that is evidence enough for your brain for it to start kind of changing that thought pattern. uh,
correct.
Changing your thought patterns and rewiring your thought process is not easy, but it is doable, especially when you approach it from a incremental perspective and approach, like you were saying.
Right, right. And, and don't beat yourself up. Like I said, give yourself grace. If
Yes.
you are starting out and you're trying to walk for 20 minutes and it doesn't work, you can't, instead of saying, I can't walk 20 minutes, I'm not going to do it at all. Just say, okay, walking 20 minutes was difficult. I need to build up to that. So I'm going to start with 15 minutes or I'm going to start with 10 minutes. And when I tell my patients who have injuries, I always tell them too to increase slowly because
Mhm.
they'll start with, a 1 mile run and then the next day they're running 5 miles. Don't do that. Like, at least
Right.
when you're starting and you're making changes, I say do it in weekly, 7 to 14 day increments. So if you're going to start off walking 10 minutes a day, do that for a full week. And then instead of going from 10 minutes to 20, then go to 15 minutes and then
Mhm.
do that for a week and then go to 20. So really just slowly let your mind, your body, and your attitude adjust. Because like you said, the way that your mind learns is through habit. And
Yeah.
no matter what your body's going through, most of the time, the hardest thing to convince is your mind that you can do it.
Yes. That's great advice, because I mean, we're in new territory here, especially
Mhm.
for like people that were active and their illness has affected their activity. We're so ready and anxious and excited to get into it. And we're like,
Right.
oh, I know I can run 1 mile. I'm just going to go ahead and start with running two. And it's like, no, well, remember when you first learned how to run, you didn't start
Right.
running with 1 mile. So now that you
Correct.
have this new condition, you don't need to compare it. Like, that's the other thing. Give yourself grace. You don't also need to compare yourself to others or to the old version of yourself too,
Correct.
in this case. Like, so I
Correct.
really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Mhm.
um Before we wrap up here, I know you have shared so much, and so I just have one other question,
Mhm.
and if you want to just reiterate something you've already said, that's fine too. But what's one thing that living with osteoarthritis has taught you in life in general?
Mm. I think I think it's taught me that this is gonna sound weird, but that I can do hard things. right? Because if I never had this obstacle, when I was in high school, I never thought about doing gymnastics or flipping off, the top of a pyramid, or, riding my bike to school, doing gymnastics, riding my bike home. Like, it was not an issue. I just knew my body could do that.
Yeah.
And so having these obstacles actually has helped me with that mentality of, I know I can do this. I know I can go through this because I've been through harder things in the past, so I can face this in the future. Like, if I have to have a hip surgery, I'm like, I got this. I know how to navigate this. And then also to pull other people along with you, right? When you get to that point where you're like, I've done this, I know how to do this, then your job is to help other people to go through it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
All right,
welcome.
y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode at least as half as much as I did. I learned a lot. I'm inspired. I'm motivated. So thank you so much, Chanel, for coming on and sharing your story and just being an encouragement and inspiration to other people. If you are listening and like this and you have a story to tell as it relates to chronic illness, come on. I'll have the
Yeah.
link in the description box as always. And I would love, love, love to talk to you. And we would love to hear from you. All right. Until next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.